I always wondered how Marcus Rivera had suddenly become such a polished entrepreneur, wrote one venture capitalist. Now it makes sense. He had you doing all the real work. This story is exactly why we need more transparency in startup. Funding, commented a female CEO. Too many women's contributions get erased when the money starts flowing. Even more gratifying were the messages from people who had worked with Marcus and Victoria, sharing their own experiences that supported my allegations. I worked with Marcus on a consulting project last year. One message read, he couldn't answer basic questions about ConnectFlow's technical architecture or marketing strategy. When I asked for details, he said he'd have to check with his team and get back to me. Now I understand why. Another message came from a former Sterling Ventures employee. Victoria Sterling talks a big game about supporting women entrepreneurs, but she's ruthless when it comes to protecting her own interests. I'm not surprised she'd invest in a company built on stolen work if it meant a good return. But Marcus and Victoria weren't taking the media coverage quietly. By the second day, their legal team had issued cease and desist letters to several publications, claiming that my allegations were defamatory and demanding retractions. They're trying to intimidate the media, Jessica explained when she called to update me. But it's not working. The journalists have done their own fact-checking, and they're confident in their reporting. More concerning was the counter-narrative that Marcus and Victoria's PR team was trying to establish. They were painting me as a disgruntled ex-girlfriend who was making false claims out of jealousy and spite. Sarah Chen was never a co-founder of ConnectFlow, read a statement from Marcus's attorney. She was a romantic partner who provided some marketing assistance during the company's early development. Her claims of ownership and intellectual property theft are completely without merit. Victoria's team was even more aggressive, releasing a statement that questioned my mental stability and professional competence. Ms. Chen left her position at Pinnacle Marketing under questionable circumstances, the statement read. Her erratic behavior and unrealistic expectations about her role in ConnectFlow's development suggest someone who is struggling to accept the end of a personal relationship. They're trying to gaslight you in the media the same way Marcus gaslighted you. In person, Jessica said angrily. They want to make you look crazy and vindictive. But their strategy backfired spectacularly when several of my former colleagues at Pinnacle Marketing came forward to defend my reputation and professional competence. Sarah Chen was one of the most talented marketing directors we ever had, my former boss told the Chicago Tribune. She left Pinnacle to pursue an entrepreneurial opportunity, not because of any performance issues. The suggestion that she was anything less than completely professional is absurd. Even more damaging to Victoria's credibility was a statement from Linda Rodriguez, a former Sterling Ventures analyst who had been fired 6 months earlier. Victoria Sterling has a pattern of taking credit for other people's work, Linda told TechCrunch in a follow-up article. She's particularly ruthless when it comes to minimizing women's contributions to successful companies. I'm not surprised. She'd be involved in erasing Sarah Chen's role in ConnectFlow. By the end of the week, the story had taken on a life of its own. ConnectFlow scandal had generated thousands of tweets, many from women sharing their own stories of having their work stolen or minimized by male colleagues and investors. The scandal was also having real business consequences for both Marcus and Victoria. 3 companies publicly announced that they were canceling contracts with ConnectFlow, citing concerns about the company's ethical practices and leadership. 2 startups withdrew from Sterling Ventures' current funding round, saying they couldn't work with an investor whose integrity was in question. But the most satisfying development came when the Illinois Attorney General's office announced that they were opening an investigation into potential fraud in ConnectFlow's incorporation and intellectual property filings. We take allegations of business fraud very seriously, the Attorney General's spokesperson told reporters. When there are credible claims that someone has been systematically defrauded out of their rightful ownership in a company, we have an obligation to investigate. That's when Marcus finally reached out to me directly. I was at Jessica's apartment, celebrating the week's media victories with takeout Chinese food and a bottle of wine, when my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Sarah, this is Marcus. We need to talk. This has gone too far. I showed the message to Jessica, who immediately went into lawyer mode. Don't respond, she said. Anything you say to him could be used against you later. If he wants to communicate, he can do it through me. But an hour later, Marcus showed up at Jessica's building, somehow having figured out where I was staying. The doorman called up to announce that there was someone in the lobby asking to see me. "Tell him to leave," Jessica said. "You don't have to talk to him." But I found myself curious about what Marcus had to say. After a week of watching him and Victoria try to destroy my credibility in the media, I wanted to hear his explanation face to face. 5 minutes, I told Jessica, in the lobby with you present as a witness. We went downstairs to find Marcus pacing in the elegant marble lobby of Jessica's building. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his expensive clothes looked wrinkled. "Sarah," he said when he saw me, and there was genuine desperation in his voice. "Thank God. We need to fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I said. "You stole my work, erased my contributions, and married my former boss. The only thing left to do is face the consequences." "You're destroying everything we built together," Marcus said. "ConnectFlow is falling apart. We're losing clients, losing investors. You're going to kill the company." "I didn't kill the company," I said. "You did, when you decided to steal it from me." "I never meant for this to happen," Marcus said, and I could see tears in his eyes. "Sarah, I loved you. I still love you. Victoria. That was a mistake. A terrible mistake." "A mistake?" I repeated incredulously. "You planned this for months. Marcus, you systematically erased me from the company while pursuing Victoria. You forged legal documents and stole my intellectual property. That's not a mistake. That's fraud." "I can fix this," Marcus said desperately. "I can give you back your ownership stake. Put your name back on everything. We can be partners again." "Partners?" I laughed bitterly. "Marcus, you're married to Victoria. You took her money. You signed her contracts. Even if I wanted to work with you again, which I don't, it's too late." "Then what do you want?" Marcus asked. "Money? I can get you money. More than Victoria offered. Just tell me what it will take to make this stop." I looked at this man who had been the center of my world for 2 years, who I had loved and supported, and believed in completely. The man who had used my love as a weapon against me, who had stolen my work and my dreams and my future. "I want justice," I said. "I want everyone to know what you really are. I want you to face consequences for what you did to me." "Sarah, please," Marcus said, reaching for my hand. "Don't destroy us both out of spite." I pulled my hand away. "I'm not destroying us, Marcus. I'm telling the truth. If the truth destroys you, that's your fault, not mine." "The truth?" Marcus's desperation was turning to anger. "The truth is that you were my girlfriend who helped with some marketing tasks. You were never a real co-founder, never a real partner. You're delusional if you think you deserve half of what I built." And there it was, the real Marcus, finally showing himself. Not the desperate man begging for forgiveness, but the arrogant entrepreneur who had never seen me as an equal partner. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For reminding me why I'm doing this," I said. "For showing me that you haven't changed at all. You still think I was just your girlfriend who helped with marketing. You still don't understand that I built ConnectFlow as much as you did. You're going to regret this, Marcus," said his mask completely dropping now. "Victoria has resources you can't imagine. She's going to destroy you, Sarah. She's going to make sure you never work in this industry again." "Let her try," I said. "I'm not the same naive woman who believed your lies for 2 years. I'm someone who fights back now." As Marcus stormed out of the lobby, Jessica put her arm around my shoulders. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I said, and I meant it. For the first time in 2 years, I feel completely free. The war was far from over, but I'd already won the most important battle, the battle for my own self-respect. Marcus and Victoria could try to destroy me, but they couldn't take away the truth, and the truth was finally setting me free. 2 weeks after Marcus's desperate visit to Jessica's building, the Illinois Attorney General's investigation reached a conclusion that exceeded even my wildest hopes for justice. I was sitting in a conference room at the AG's office, flanked by Jessica and 2 state prosecutors, when they laid out the charges they were filing against Marcus: wire fraud, securities fraud, and theft of intellectual property, said Assistant Attorney General Patricia Williams. Mr. Rivera systematically defrauded you out of your rightful ownership in ConnectFlow, then used that stolen company to obtain $15 million in fraudulent investment. What does that mean in practical terms? I asked. It means Marcus is looking at potential federal charges that could result in significant prison time, Patricia explained. And it means you have grounds for both criminal restitution and civil damages that could amount to millions of dollars. The investigation had uncovered even more evidence of Marcus's deception than Jessica and I had found on our own. Digital. Forensics experts had recovered deleted files from Marcus's computer, showing multiple drafts of legal documents where he'd systematically removed my name and ownership stake. They'd found email communications with Victoria's legal team discussing how to clean up the ownership structure before the investment deal. Most damning of all, they'd discovered that Marcus had been in communication with Victoria's team for over 8 months before their supposed whirlwind romance, planning not just the investment deal, but also how to eliminate any claims I might have to the company. This wasn't a crime of passion or a business relationship that got complicated, Patricia said. This was a carefully orchestrated conspiracy to defraud you out of millions of dollars. What about Victoria? I asked. Is she being charged too? Patricia's expression grew more cautious. Ms. Sterling's involvement is more complex. While we have evidence that she was aware of irregularities in ConnectFlow's ownership structure, proving criminal intent is more difficult given her position as an investor rather than a company insider. So she gets away with it? Not necessarily, Patricia said. We're still investigating her role, and there may be civil liability even if we can't prove criminal charges. Plus, the SEC is conducting their own investigation into Sterling Ventures' due diligence practices. The Securities and Exchange Commission investigation was actually more threatening to Victoria than the criminal charges were to Marcus. If the SEC found that Sterling Ventures had knowingly invested in a company with fraudulent ownership claims, they could face massive fines and sanctions that would effectively destroy Victoria's business. The financial industry takes fraud very seriously, Jessica explained as we left the AG's office. Even if Victoria doesn't face criminal charges, the SEC investigation could ruin her reputation and her firm. But the legal proceedings were only part of the reckoning that Marcus and Victoria were facing. The media coverage had continued to intensify, with new revelations emerging almost daily about their business practices and personal conduct. A particularly devastating article in the Wall Street Journal had revealed that ConnectFlow wasn't the first company where Marcus had questionable ownership claims. The newspaper had found 2 previous startups where Marcus had been involved in disputes with co-founders over intellectual property and equity stakes. Rivera appears to have a pattern of minimizing or eliminating his partner's contributions once companies become successful, the journal reported. Former colleagues describe him as charming and persuasive in the early stages of projects, but ruthless when it comes to claiming credit and ownership. Victoria's reputation was suffering even more severe damage. A former Sterling Ventures employee had come forward with internal emails showing that Victoria had specifically instructed her team to minimize any potential claims from Rivera's ex-girlfriend during the ConnectFlow due diligence process. Sterling knew that Sarah Chen had legitimate ownership claims, the whistleblower told TechCrunch, but she was so focused on the potential returns from ConnectFlow that she chose to ignore the ethical and legal issues. The scandal had also attracted the attention of women's advocacy groups in the tech industry who were using my case as an example of how female entrepreneurs' contributions are systematically erased and devalued. Sarah Chen's story is unfortunately not unique, said Maria Rodriguez, director of Women in Tech Chicago. We see this pattern repeatedly. Women do the foundational work to build companies, then get pushed out when the money and recognition start flowing to male founders. The advocacy groups had organized a social media campaign called Dachshund Credit Where Credit Is Due, encouraging women to share their own stories of having their work stolen or minimized. The response was overwhelming, with hundreds of women posting about similar experiences across various industries. But the most satisfying development came when ConnectFlow's major clients started abandoning the platform en masse. The company that Marcus had built on my stolen work was collapsing under the weight of the scandal. We can't continue to work with a vendor whose fundamental business practices are under criminal investigation, announced Jennifer Walsh, CEO of Morrison Industries, one of ConnectFlow's largest clients. Trust and integrity are essential in business relationships. Within 3 weeks of the first TechCrunch article, ConnectFlow had lost over 60% of its client base. The company's valuation, which had been $15 million at the time of Victoria's investment, was now essentially worthless. They're going to have to shut down, Jessica told me during one of our regular check-ins. Without clients and with all the legal issues, ConnectFlow is finished. Good, I said, and I meant it. If I can't have the company I helped build, then Marcus shouldn't get to profit from stealing it. But Marcus wasn't going down quietly. As ConnectFlow collapsed and the criminal charges mounted, he became increasingly desperate and vindictive. He started making public statements claiming that I was mentally unstable and had fabricated evidence out of jealousy. Sarah Chen is a disturbed individual who can't accept that our relationship ended, Marcus told a blogger who was sympathetic to his cause. She's constructed an elaborate fantasy where she was somehow the real founder of my company. It's sad, really. His attempts to discredit me backfired spectacularly when several of my former colleagues and clients came forward to defend my professional reputation and mental stability. I worked with Sarah Chen for 3 years at Pinnacle Marketing, said Tom Bradley, a former account director. She was one of the most competent and level-headed professionals I've ever known. The suggestion that she's mentally unstable is not just wrong, it's offensive. Even more damaging to Marcus's credibility was when his own former employees started contradicting his claims. Janet Morrison, who had been ConnectFlow's part-time bookkeeper, gave an interview to the Chicago Tribune that demolished Marcus's version of events. Sarah was definitely running the day-to-day operations of ConnectFlow, Janet said. She handled all the customer communications, managed the social media accounts, and created most of the marketing materials. Marcus was focused on the technical, development, and fundraising, but Sarah was the one keeping the business running. Victoria, meanwhile, had retreated from public view entirely. Sterling Ventures had suspended all new investments pending the SEC investigation, and Victoria had canceled all her speaking engagements and public appearances. But I knew she was still fighting behind the scenes when I received a call from an unexpected source, Linda Rodriguez, the former Sterling Ventures analyst who had been fired 6 months earlier. Sarah, I need to tell you something, Linda said when we met at a coffee shop in downtown Chicago. Victoria is planning something. She's been meeting with private investigators and reputation management firms. What kind of something? She's trying to dig up dirt on you, Linda said. Personal stuff, financial problems, anything she can use to discredit you. She's also been reaching out to your former colleagues and clients, trying to find people who will say negative things about your work. Has she found anything? Not that I know of, Linda said. But Sarah, you need to be careful. Victoria is desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. Linda's warning proved prescient when I started noticing strange things happening. Around my temporary apartment, cars that seemed to follow me, people taking photos of me in public places, phone calls where no one spoke when I answered. You're being surveilled, Jessica said when I told her about the incidents. Victoria's hired private investigators to watch you, probably hoping to catch you doing something that would undermine your credibility. Is that legal? Unfortunately, yes, as long as they're not trespassing or threatening you, Jessica said, but it shows how desperate Victoria is getting. The surveillance actually worked in my favor when one of the private investigators approached my neighbor, trying to get information about my personal life. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was a retired teacher who had followed the ConnectFlow story in the news and was firmly on my side. This young man came to my door asking questions about you, Mrs. Patterson told me. Wanted to know about your habits, your visitors, whether you seemed emotionally stable. I told him you were a lovely, professional young woman and that he should be ashamed of himself for harassing you. Mrs. Patterson had also taken a photo of the investigator's license plate, which Jessica was able to trace back to a firm that specialized in opposition research for high-profile legal cases. Victoria's spending serious money trying to destroy your reputation, Jessica said. That's actually good news for us. It shows she's scared and running out of legitimate options. The final blow to Victoria's reputation came when the SEC released a preliminary report on their investigation into Sterling Ventures. While they stopped short of filing formal charges, the report was scathing in its assessment of the firm's due diligence practices. Sterling Ventures failed to adequately investigate credible claims regarding ConnectFlow's ownership structure, the report stated. The firm's investment decision appears to have been influenced more by personal relationships than by proper business analysis. The SEC also revealed that they were expanding their investigation to include other Sterling Ventures investments, looking for patterns of inadequate due diligence or conflicts of interest. This is a death sentence for Victoria's business, Jessica explained. No serious investor will work with Sterling Ventures after this. Her reputation in the financial industry is finished. 3 months after I'd first seen Marcus and Victoria's wedding announcement, I was sitting in my new apartment, a beautiful one-bedroom in Lincoln Park that I'd been able to afford thanks to the settlement money from ConnectFlow's insurance company, when I got a call that brought the whole saga full circle. "Sarah, this is Tom Chen from Pinnacle Marketing," the voice said. "I know this might seem strange given everything that's happened, but we'd like to offer you your old job back. Actually, we'd like to offer you a promotion." Tom was the new CEO of Pinnacle Marketing, having taken over when Victoria had been forced to resign due to the scandal surrounding her involvement with ConnectFlow. "We're restructuring the company to focus more on ethical business practices and supporting female leadership," Tom explained. "We think you'd be perfect as our new VP of Marketing and Business Development." "What about Victoria?" I asked. "Victoria is no longer with the company," Tom said. "The board felt that her involvement in the ConnectFlow situation was incompatible with our values and reputation. So Victoria had lost not just her investment firm, but also her position at the company she'd built over 15 years. The woman who had tried to destroy my career had ended up destroying her own instead." "I'm interested," I told Tom. "When can we meet?" As I hung up the phone, I realized that I'd not only survived Marcus and Victoria's attempts to destroy me, I'd emerged stronger than ever. I had a new job that paid more than my old one, a beautiful apartment, and most importantly, the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. Marcus was facing federal fraud charges that would likely result in prison time. Victoria had lost her business, her reputation, and her career. ConnectFlow, the company built on my stolen work, had collapsed completely, and I was finally free to build the future I deserved on my own terms, with my own work and my own success. The war was over, and I had won. "What do you suggest?" "We start with the tech industry publications," Jessica said. "TechCrunch, VentureBeat, Chicago Business Journal. We present this as a story about intellectual property theft and startup fraud, not a personal vendetta, Will." "They take it seriously? With this much evidence?" "Absolutely," Jessica said, "especially because it involves Victoria Sterling. She's a public figure who's built her brand on supporting women in business. The irony of her stealing another woman's work is too good for journalists to ignore." We spent the next 2 days crafting a comprehensive dossier of evidence, complete with timelines, documentation, and a clear narrative of how Marcus had systematically stolen my contributions to ConnectFlow. Jessica helped me write a professional summary that laid out the facts without emotional language or personal attacks. "The key is to let the evidence speak for itself," Jessica said. "Don't call Marcus a liar or a thief. Just present the facts, and let readers draw their own conclusions." But before we could approach any journalists, we got an unexpected visitor. I was packing up my belongings from Marcus's apartment, finally ready to move out and start rebuilding my life, when there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Victoria Sterling standing in the hallway, looking every inch the powerful CEO in her tailored suit and designer handbag. "Sarah," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "I think we need to talk." "I have nothing to say to you," I said, starting to close the door. "Actually, you do," Victoria said, placing her hand on the door to stop me. "Because I know what you're planning, and I'm here to offer you a better alternative." Despite every instinct telling me to slam the door in her face, curiosity got the better of me. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the little investigation you and your lawyer friend have been conducting," Victoria said. I'm talking about the evidence you've been compiling and the journalists you're planning to contact. My blood went cold. How do you know about that? Victoria smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Sarah, I didn't become one of Chicago's most successful investors by being naive. When someone starts digging into my business, I find out about it. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you an opportunity, Victoria said. May I come in? This conversation would be better had in private. Against my better judgment, I let her into the apartment. Victoria looked around at the cramped space with barely concealed disdain, taking in the secondhand furniture and the boxes of my belongings scattered around the room. This is where you've been living for the past 2 years? She asked. While building a company that's now worth $15 million? Get to the point, I said. Victoria sat down on Marcus's couch like she owned the place. The point is that you have 2 choices, Sarah. You can try to destroy Marcus and me with your little exposé, which will result in a long, expensive legal battle that you can't afford and probably won't win. Or you can accept my offer and walk away with enough money to rebuild your life. What offer? $500,000, Victoria said. In exchange for a signed non-disclosure agreement and your promise to never discuss your role in ConnectFlow's development. I stared at her in disbelief. You're trying to buy my silence. I'm trying to offer you a fair settlement for your contributions to the company, Victoria said. $500,000 is more money than you've ever seen, Sarah. It's enough to start your own business, buy a house, build the life you want. It's a fraction of what my work is actually worth, I said. It's more than you'll get if you try to fight us in court, Victoria said. Sarah, be realistic. You're a marketing director who's been out of work for 2 years. Marcus and I are successful entrepreneurs with unlimited legal resources. If you try to destroy us, we'll destroy you first. Is that a threat? It's a fact, Victoria said. I have connections throughout the marketing industry. One word from me and you'll never work in Chicago again. But if you take my offer, you can disappear quietly and start fresh somewhere else. I felt a surge of rage at her casual arrogance, her assumption that she could buy me off and make me disappear. Get out, I said. Sarah, be smart about this, Victoria said. You're not going to win a war against me. Take the money and move on. With your life. Get out of this apartment right now, I said, my voice rising. And tell Marcus that if he wants to talk to me, he can do it through my lawyer. Victoria stood up, smoothing down her skirt. You're making a mistake, Sarah. I'm offering you more money than you deserve for work that was never legally yours to begin with. Don't let pride destroy your future. My future was already destroyed, I said. By you and Marcus. Now I'm going to destroy yours. Victoria's mask of professional courtesy finally slipped, and I saw the cold calculation underneath. You have no idea what you're up against, she said, but you're about to find out. After she left, I called Jessica immediately. She offered you $500,000? Jessica said. Sarah, that's actually a good sign. It means they're scared. It means they know our evidence is strong enough to damage them. She also threatened to destroy my career if I don't take the money. Let her try, Jessica said. By the time we're done with our media campaign, Victoria Sterling's reputation will be so damaged that her threats won't matter. Are you sure about this? I asked. Victoria's right about one thing. She has unlimited resources and connections. If we go to war with her, she could destroy both of us. Sarah, Jessica said, and her voice was firm. You have a choice. You can take Victoria's money and disappear, letting her and Marcus get away with stealing your work and your life. Or you can fight back and show the world what kind of people they really are. What if we lose? Then we lose fighting for what's right, Jessica said. But Sarah, I've seen the evidence. We're not going to lose. That night, I made my decision. I wasn't going to take Victoria's money and disappear quietly. I wasn't going to let Marcus and Victoria profit from my work while I started over with nothing. I was going to war, and I was going to win. The next morning, I sent my dossier of evidence to 5 different tech journalists, along with a detailed account of how Marcus Rivera and Victoria Sterling had built their success on fraud and theft. The battle for my reputation, my work, and my future was about to begin. The first article went live on TechCrunch at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning with the headline, ConnectFlow founder accused of stealing co-founder's intellectual property and investment. By noon, the story had been picked up by VentureBeat, Chicago Business Journal, and 3 other major tech publications. By evening, Bashar ConnectFlow scandal was trending on Twitter. I was sitting in a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, watching the story explode across social media when my phone started ringing with calls from reporters, industry contacts, and people I hadn't heard from in years. "Sarah, this is incredible," Jessica said, calling me from her office. "The response is even bigger than we hoped. Everyone's talking about it." The TechCrunch article had been particularly devastating because the journalist, Maria Santos, had done her own investigation and found additional evidence that corroborated my claims. She'd interviewed former ConnectFlow beta users who confirmed that I had been the primary point of contact for customer service and product feedback. She'd spoken with vendors who remembered me handling payments and business communications. Most damaging of all, she'd obtained comments from several people who had attended industry events with Marcus over the past year, confirming that he had been presenting himself as ConnectFlow's sole founder while I was still actively working on the company. Rivera consistently described himself as the founder and CEO of ConnectFlow, one source told TechCrunch. He never mentioned having a co-founder or business partner. When people asked about his team, he would talk about contractors and freelancers, but never acknowledged anyone as an equal partner. The article also included a statement from Victoria Sterling that was clearly written by her legal team. Ms. Sterling and Sterling Ventures conducted thorough due diligence before investing in ConnectFlow. All investment decisions were based on the company's documented ownership structure and intellectual property rights. Ms. Sterling has no comment on personal disputes between former business associates. But the most damaging part of the coverage was the timeline that Maria Santos had constructed, showing how Marcus's relationship with Victoria had developed parallel to his systematic erasure of my role in ConnectFlow. The evidence suggests that Rivera began pursuing Sterling romantically at the same time he was removing Chen's name from company documents, the article stated. This raises questions about whether the relationship was genuine or strategic, and whether Sterling was aware of Chen's contributions when she decided to invest. Within hours of the TechCrunch article going live, my phone was buzzing with interview requests. CNN Business wanted to do a segment on startup fraud. The Chicago Tribune wanted to explore the broader implications for women in tech. 3 different podcasts wanted me to tell my story in detail, but the most satisfying response came from people within the tech industry itself. My LinkedIn profile, which had been dormant for 2 years, suddenly had dozens of connection requests and messages of support. "So she's complicit," Jessica said. "She's not just Marcus's wife and investor. She's his accomplice in stealing your work." The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Victoria Sterling had built her reputation on being a champion of women in business, on supporting female entrepreneurs, and promoting gender equality in the tech industry. She gave speeches about the importance of recognizing women's contributions and ensuring they received credit for their work. And yet she had knowingly invested in a company built on stolen intellectual property, married the man who had defrauded me, and was now profiting from my work while I sat in a studio apartment with nothing to show for 2 years of my life. "I'm going to destroy them," I said quietly. "What do you mean?" Jessica asked. "I mean I'm going to expose what they did." I said, "I'm going to make sure everyone knows that ConnectFlow was built on fraud, that Marcus is a thief, and that Victoria is complicit in stealing another woman's work." "Sarah, be careful," Jessica said. "These are powerful people with expensive lawyers. If you go after them, you need to be smart about it." "I am being smart," I said. "I have evidence, I have documentation. I have a paper trail proving that I co-founded ConnectFlow and that Marcus systematically erased me from the company." "What's your plan?" I was quiet for a moment, thinking through my options. I could sue Marcus and Victoria, but that would take years and cost money I didn't have. I could go to the media, but they might not take my story seriously without more concrete proof. Or I could do something that would hit them where it hurt most, their reputations. "I'm going to tell the truth," I said finally. "I'm going to document everything that happened Compile all my evidence and make it public. I'm going to make sure that everyone in the tech industry knows what kind of people Marcus Rivera and Victoria Sterling really are. How? Social media, industry blogs, networking events, I said. The tech world is smaller than people think. If I can get my story out there, if I can prove what they did, it will follow them for the rest of their careers. Jessica looked worried. Sarah, that's a dangerous game. If you're wrong about anything, if you can't prove every detail, they could sue you for defamation. I'm not wrong, I said, and I can prove everything. Marcus made the mistake of leaving a paper trail, and Victoria made the mistake of underestimating me. What about your own career? Jessica asked. If you go to war with Victoria Sterling, you might never work in marketing again. She has connections throughout the industry. I thought about this. Jessica was right. Going after Victoria could destroy my own career prospects. But what career prospects did I have left? I'd been out of the industry for 2 years, had no recent experience to show potential employers, and had burned bridges when I'd quit my job at Pinnacle to support Marcus. My career is already destroyed, I said. Marcus and Victoria made sure of that when they erased me from ConnectFlow's history. At least this way, I go down fighting. Okay, Jessica said, and I could see her shifting into support mode. If you're going to do this, let's do it right. We need to be strategic, methodical, and absolutely bulletproof in our evidence. We? You think I'm going to let you take on 2 of Chicago's most powerful business people alone? Jessica said. I'm a corporate lawyer, Sarah. This is exactly the kind of case I live for. For the first time since seeing the wedding announcement, I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't alone in this fight. I had an ally, I had evidence, and I had nothing left to lose. Marcus and Victoria thought they could steal my work, erase my contributions, and move on with their lives without consequences. They thought I would quietly disappear, too heartbroken and defeated to fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The war was just beginning, and I was going to make sure they regretted ever underestimating Sarah Chen Jessica, and I spent the next week building what she called an airtight case against Marcus and Victoria. Working from my laptop at various coffee shops around Chicago, I couldn't bear to stay in Marcus's apartment any longer than necessary. We methodically documented every piece of evidence that proved my role in creating ConnectFlow. This is actually better than I expected, Jessica said as we reviewed the timeline we'd constructed. Marcus was sloppy. He left digital fingerprints everywhere. We had organized the evidence into several categories: my intellectual property, contributions, proof of my financial investment in the company, documentation of my operational role, and evidence of Marcus's systematic deception. The intellectual property evidence was the strongest. I had original design files for ConnectFlow's logo, user interface, and marketing materials, all time-stamped and saved under my name. I had email chains showing me developing the company's brand strategy, writing the website copy, and creating the social media content that had attracted our first users. Look at this, Jessica said, pointing to a series of emails from 18 months ago. Marcus is literally asking you to explain basic marketing concepts to him. What's the difference between organic reach and paid reach? How do we calculate customer acquisition cost? This guy couldn't run a lemonade stand without you. The financial evidence was equally damning. I had bank statements showing that I'd transferred over $40,000 of my own money to Marcus over the course of 2 years. Money for rent, equipment, software licenses, and business expenses. I had receipts for the laptop I'd bought him, the conference fees I'd paid, the business cards and marketing materials I'd funded. $40,000, Jessica said, shaking her head. Sarah, you basically funded this company's entire development phase. I thought I was investing in our future, I said bitterly. I thought when ConnectFlow succeeded, we'd both benefit. You. We're investing in your future, Jessica said. Marcus just stole it. The operational evidence showed that I'd been running ConnectFlow's day-to-day operations for 2 years. I had customer service emails, social media posts, and marketing campaign. Reports all created by me. I had spreadsheets tracking user growth, revenue projections, and business metrics that I'd compiled and maintained. But the most damaging evidence was what Jessica called the smoking gun, a series of documents that proved Marcus had been planning to cut me out of the company for months. We'd found draft incorporation papers on Marcus's laptop, papers I'd apparently had access to because I'd been using his computer for business purposes, that showed multiple versions of Connect Flows. Ownership structure. The earliest drafts listed me as a 50% owner. Later versions reduced my stake to 25%, then 10%, then 0. He was testing different scenarios, Jessica explained, figuring out how to minimize your ownership while maximizing his own. This proves premeditation. Even more damning were the email drafts we found in Marcus's account. Emails he'd never sent, but had saved as he planned his exit strategy. One draft, addressed to me and dated 3 months ago, read, "Sarah, I've been thinking about our partnership, and I feel like we want different things for ConnectFlow's future. I think it might be best if we restructured our arrangement so that you can focus on your own career goals while I take full responsibility for the company's direction." Another draft, never sent, was even more brutal. "I appreciate everything you've done to help get ConnectFlow off the ground, but I think it's time for you to step back and let me handle the business side. I'm prepared to offer you a consulting fee for your past contributions." "A consulting fee," I said, reading the draft with disgust. "For 2 years of my life and $40,000 of my money. He was planning to buy you out for pennies." "On the dollar," Jessica said. "Probably a few $1,000s to make himself feel better about stealing millions." But the most shocking discovery came when Jessica used her legal connections to run a background check on Marcus and Victoria's relationship timeline. "I found something interesting," Jessica said, pulling up a series of social media posts on her laptop. "Look at these photos from Victoria's Instagram account." The photos showed Victoria at various industry events over the past year, and in several of them, Marcus was visible in the background or standing nearby. The timestamps showed that these events had taken place during periods when Marcus had told me he was working late or attending boring networking events that I wouldn't enjoy. "He's been pursuing her for over a year," Jessica said. This wasn't a sudden romance that developed after his business took off. This was a calculated campaign. We found more evidence of their relationship in the metadata of photos Marcus had taken on his phone. Several photos of Victoria, photos I'd never seen, were taken at restaurants and events during times when Marcus had told me he was in business meetings. "He was dating her while living with you," Jessica said, "while you were supporting him financially and building his company for him." The betrayal was so complete, so systematic, that I felt numb. Marcus hadn't just used me for my skills and money. He'd been actively deceiving me while pursuing the woman who could actually advance his career. "We need to be strategic about how we release this information," Jessica said. "If we just dump everything on social media, it'll look like the rantings of a bitter ex-girlfriend. We need to be professional, factual, and devastating." I was the marketing expert who could help him refine his business plan, the financial safety net who could support him while he developed his product, the unpaid employee who could handle all the grunt work while he focused on networking with more important people. And when he'd finally caught the attention of someone who could actually advance his career, someone with real money and real connections, he'd discarded me without a second thought. I'd been so naive, so trusting, so completely blind to what was really happening. While I was working 16-hour days to build our future together, Marcus was building his future with someone else. The man I'd loved, the man I'd sacrificed everything for, the man I'd believed in when no one else would, had used me and thrown me away like I was nothing. But as I sat there in that cramped apartment, surrounded by the evidence of my own stupidity, I felt something unexpected rising in my chest. Not just heartbreak, but rage. Marcus thought he could use me and discard me without consequences. He thought he could steal 2 years of my life, my career, my savings, and my dreams, and then just disappear into his new life with Victoria. He was wrong. I might have been naive enough to trust him, but I wasn't weak enough to let him get away with it. Marcus Rivera was about to learn that the woman he'd underestimated and discarded was much stronger than he'd ever imagined, and his perfect new life was about to become very, very complicated. First thing I did after seeing the wedding announcement was throw up. The second thing I did was call my best friend Jessica, who had been warning me about Marcus for 2 years and had the grace not to say, "I told you so," when I sobbed into the phone at 2 a.m. "I'm coming over," Jessica said without hesitation. "Don't do anything stupid until I get there." "Like what?" I asked through my tears. Like calling him or texting him or posting anything on social media, Jessica said. Sarah, I know you're devastated right now, but you need to think strategically. This isn't just about a breakup. This is about a man who stole 2 years of your life and your career. Jessica arrived 20 minutes later with a bottle of wine, a box of tissues, and the kind of righteous anger that only a best friend can muster on your behalf. Show me everything, she said, settling onto Marcus's couch like she was preparing for war. I pulled up the wedding announcement on my laptop, and Jessica read it with the focused intensity of a lawyer reviewing evidence. Listen to this bullshit, she said, reading aloud. Rivera's innovative social media platform, ConnectFlow, has revolutionized how small businesses manage their online presence. Sterling Ventures led the company's recent Series A funding round, citing Rivera's visionary leadership and the platform's impressive user growth. Visionary leadership, I repeated bitterly. I built that platform. I designed the user interface, wrote all the marketing copy, managed the customer service, handled the social media accounts. Marcus couldn't even send a professional email without me editing it first. And look at this, Jessica continued. The couple met when Rivera pitched his startup to Sterling's investment firm 3 years ago. Sterling was immediately impressed by Rivera's passion and business acumen, and their professional relationship gradually developed into a personal one. 3 years ago, I said, the timeline clicking into place. That's when Marcus first pitched to Victoria and got rejected. That's when he met me. So he's been playing a long game, Jessica said. He used you to develop his business and his pitch until he was attractive enough to land Victoria. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I could barely process it. Marcus hadn't just fallen out of love with me. He'd never been in love with me at all. I'd been a means to an end, a stepping stone to the woman who could actually advance his career. I need to see the company records, I said suddenly. What do you mean? ConnectFlow's incorporation papers, the intellectual property filings, the trademark applications, I said, my mind starting to work clearly for the first time in hours. If Marcus has been planning this for months, if he's been cutting me out of the business while I was still doing all the work, there might be legal issues. Jessica looked at me with approval. Now you're thinking like the smart, successful woman I know you are. Where are the business documents? I pulled out the filing cabinet where Marcus kept all of ConnectFlow's legal paperwork. As I went through the documents, my heart sank further with each page. The original incorporation papers from 2 years ago listed both Marcus and me as co-founders, with equal ownership stakes. But there were amended filings from 6 months ago, right around the time Marcus started having regular meetings with Victoria, that removed my name entirely and listed Marcus as the sole owner and founder of ConnectFlow. He forged my signature, I said, staring at the documents. Look at this. There's a form saying I voluntarily relinquished my ownership stake in the company, but I never signed this. I never even saw it. Jessica examined the signature. This doesn't look like your handwriting at all. Because it's not, I said. Marcus has been planning this for months. He's been systematically erasing me from the company while I was still doing all the work to build it. I kept digging through the files and found more evidence of Marcus's deception. There were trademark applications for ConnectFlow's name and logo that listed only Marcus as the applicant, even though I had designed the logo and come up with the company name. There were patent applications for features I had developed, with Marcus listed as the sole inventor. Most damning of all, there was a contract between ConnectFlow and Sterling Ventures for the Series A funding round. The contract was dated 3 weeks ago, while Marcus was still living with me, still letting me believe we were building a future together, and it valued the company at $15 million. $15 million. For a company I had helped build from nothing, using my savings, my expertise, and 2 years of my life. And according to these documents, I owned exactly 0% of it. This is fraud, Jessica said, reading over my shoulder. Sarah, this isn't just a bad breakup. This is theft. Marcus stole your intellectual property, forged legal documents, and defrauded you out of millions of dollars. But how do I prove it? I asked. It's my word against his, and he's the one with all the legal documents. You must have evidence, Jessica said. Emails, text messages, files on your computer. You've been working on this company for 2 years. There has to be a digital trail proving your contributions. She was right. I spent the next 3 hours going through my laptop, my email accounts, and my cloud storage, compiling evidence of my role in building ConnectFlow. What I found was overwhelming. I had hundreds of emails between Marcus and me discussing business strategy, product development, and marketing plans. I had drafts of every piece of marketing copy I'd written for the company with timestamps proving I'd created them. I had design files for the logo, the website, and the user interface, all saved under my name. Most importantly, I had a series of text messages from just 3 months ago, where Marcus had explicitly acknowledged my role as co-founder. "You're the best business partner I could ask for," one message read. "ConnectFlow wouldn't exist without you." Another message, sent just 6 weeks ago. "I know I don't say it enough, but you're the heart and soul of this company. When we make it big, I'm going to make sure you get the recognition you deserve." "He was still lying to me 6 weeks ago," I said, showing Jessica the messages. "He was still pretending I was his partner while he was secretly cutting me out of everything." "What about Victoria?" Jessica asked. "Do you think she knows about your role in the company?" I thought about this. Victoria was many things: ruthless, ambitious, calculating, but she wasn't stupid. She had to know that Marcus couldn't have built ConnectFlow alone, especially given how unimpressive his original pitch had been 3 years ago. "She has to know," I said. "Victoria's too smart to invest $15 million without doing due diligence. She would have researched the company's history, looked at the development timeline, analyzed the intellectual property." "So she's complicit," Jessica said. "She's not just Marcus's wife and investor. She's his accomplice in stealing your work." And I did believe in us. Marcus made me feel like I was part of something bigger than myself. Like together we could build not just a successful company, but a life that mattered. He talked about our future in terms of when ConnectFlow takes off and when we have enough money to buy a house, and when we can finally relax and enjoy what we've built together. The turning point came 18 months into our relationship, when Marcus's savings finally ran out and he was facing the choice between getting a regular job or abandoning ConnectFlow entirely. "I can't give up now," he said, pacing around his apartment like a caged animal. "I'm so close to a breakthrough. The platform is almost ready for beta testing, and I have meetings lined up with 3 potential investors next month. So don't give up," I said. "What do you need?" "I need about 6 months of runway," Marcus said. "Enough to cover my basic expenses while I focus on fundraising and product development. But I don't have it, and I can't ask my parents for more money." "What if I supported you?" I heard myself saying. "What if I covered your expenses for 6 months while you get ConnectFlow off the ground?" Marcus stopped pacing and stared at me. "Sarah, I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking," I said. "I'm offering. I have savings, I have a good salary, I can cover both our expenses for 6 months, maybe longer. But what about your career? Your apartment? Your life? My life is with you," I said, and I meant it. If ConnectFlow succeeds, we both succeed. We're a team. That's how I ended up quitting my job at Pinnacle Marketing, giving up my beautiful 1-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, and moving into Marcus's studio to become his full-time, unpaid business partner. I told myself it was an investment in our future, that I was being smart and strategic and supportive. Looking back, I can see that I was being naive and manipulated and used. For the next year, I threw myself into making ConnectFlow a success. I redesigned the entire user interface, wrote all the marketing materials, managed the social media accounts, and handled customer service for the beta users. I lived on my savings while Marcus focused on product development and investor meetings. "You're all amazing," Marcus would tell me as I worked 16-hour days to keep his dream alive. "I couldn't do this without you. When we make it big, I'm going to make sure you get everything you deserve." I believed him. I believed that we were building something together, that my sacrifices were investments in our shared future. When my savings started running low, I took on freelance marketing projects to keep us afloat. When Marcus needed new equipment, I sold my jewelry to pay for it. When he wanted to attend industry conferences, I found ways to cover the travel expenses. I was so focused on supporting Marcus that I didn't notice how he'd started changing. He was spending more time at networking events, staying out later, being more secretive about his meetings. When I asked about his day, he'd give me vague answers about potential partnerships and strategic discussions. The business world is all about relationships, he'd say when I questioned why he was going to so many social events without me. I need to build my network if ConnectFlow is going to succeed. I understood that, or at least I thought I did. I was so busy keeping the company running day to day that I didn't have time for networking events anyway. I trusted Marcus to handle the business development side while I managed everything else. The first sign that something was wrong came 6 months ago, when Marcus started mentioning Victoria Sterling more frequently. I ran into Victoria at the Tech Innovators Conference, he said one evening. She said she's been following ConnectFlow's progress and she's impressed with how far we've come. That's great, I said, looking up from the customer support emails I was answering. Maybe she'll reconsider investing. Maybe, Marcus said, but there was something in his tone that made me pay attention. She invited me to have coffee next week to discuss some potential opportunities. What kind of opportunities? I'm not sure yet, Marcus said, but Victoria has connections throughout the industry. If she's willing to open doors for us, we should take advantage of that. I agreed, of course. Victoria was one of the most successful business people in Chicago, and her endorsement could make ConnectFlow's future. I encouraged Marcus to meet with her, to build that relationship, to do whatever it took to get her support. I had no idea that I was encouraging him to pursue the woman who would replace me. Over the next few months, Marcus's meetings with Victoria became more frequent. Coffee to discuss strategy turned into lunch to review business plans, turned into dinner to meet with potential investors. Marcus would come home from these meetings energized and excited, talking about Victoria's insights and connections, and vision for ConnectFlow's future. She really gets it, he'd say. She understands what we're trying to build here. That's wonderful, I'd say, even though something about his enthusiasm made me uncomfortable. What does she think about our marketing strategy? She thinks we need to scale up faster, Marcus said. She's talking about potentially leading a Series A funding round if we can hit certain growth targets. This was the breakthrough we'd been working toward for 2 years. Victoria Sterling leading our funding round would legitimize ConnectFlow in ways I'd only dreamed of. I should have been thrilled. Instead, I felt a growing sense of unease that I couldn't quite explain. The unease turned to alarm 3 months ago when I discovered that Marcus had been taking meetings without telling me about them. I found out, by accident, when a potential client called asking about a proposal that Marcus had supposedly sent them, a proposal I knew nothing about. Why didn't you tell me about the Johnson Industries meeting? I asked Marcus that evening. What meeting? Marcus said, not looking up from his laptop. The one where you pitched them our enterprise package, I said. They called today asking about implementation timelines. Marcus finally looked at me, and I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or annoyance at being caught. Oh, that, he said. It was just a preliminary conversation. I didn't want to get your hopes up until I knew if they were serious. Marcus, I handle all our client communications, I said. How am I supposed to do my job if I don't know about meetings you're taking? You're right, Marcus said. I should have told you. I've just been so focused on closing deals that I haven't been communicating well. I accepted his explanation because I wanted to believe it. But over the next few weeks, I started noticing other discrepancies. Emails I wasn't copied on, meetings that appeared on his calendar without context, phone calls he'd taken the other room. Is everything okay? I asked him one evening. You seem distracted lately. Just stressed about the funding round, Marcus said. Victoria's been pushing us to move faster, and I want to make sure we're ready. Maybe I should sit in on your next meeting with her, I suggested. I could present the marketing metrics, show her how our user acquisition has improved. That's not necessary, Marcus said quickly. Victoria prefers to keep these initial discussions small. Too many people in the room can complicate the decision-making process. I should have insisted. I should have demanded to be included in meetings about the company I'd sacrificed everything to build. But I trusted Marcus, and I didn't want to. Seem needy or controlling, that trust was my biggest mistake. 2 weeks ago, Marcus told me he was going to a 3-day conference in San Francisco to meet with potential West Coast investors. He said Victoria was going too, that she was introducing him to her network out there. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for, he said as he packed his suitcase. If these meetings go well, we might have our Series A locked up by the end of the month. I'm so proud of you, I said, kissing him goodbye. We've worked so hard for this moment. We have, Marcus agreed, but he didn't meet my eyes when he said it. He was supposed to be back on Friday, but Friday came and went with no word from him. I texted and called, but got no response. By Saturday evening, I was genuinely worried that something had happened to him. That's when I saw the wedding announcement. I was scrolling through social media, looking for any sign that Marcus was okay, when a friend from my old job shared a post from the Chicago Tribune's business section. The headline read, Tech CEO Victoria Sterling marries entrepreneur Marcus Rivera in intimate Napa Valley ceremony. The photo showed Marcus and Victoria cutting a wedding cake, both of them radiant with happiness. Victoria was wearing a stunning white dress that probably cost more than I'd made in the past year. Marcus was in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking more handsome and confident than I'd ever seen him. The article described their whirlwind romance and mentioned that Marcus's startup, ConnectFlow, had just secured Series A funding led by Sterling Ventures, Victoria's investment firm. I read the article 3 times before the reality sank in. Marcus hadn't gone to San Francisco for business meetings. He'd gone there to marry my former boss. The woman who had rejected his initial pitch 3 years ago was now his wife and his primary investor. And I, the woman who had given up everything to support his dreams, had been completely erased from the story. I sat in Marcus's tiny apartment, surrounded by the remnants of the life I'd built around him, and realized that I'd been played from the very beginning. Marcus hadn't fallen in love with me. He'd seen an opportunity. I gave up everything for him. My career, my apartment, my independence, my dreams, all of it sacrificed on the altar of what I thought was true love. For 2 years, I supported Marcus while he built his startup, believing that we were building our future together. I quit my job as a marketing director at one of Chicago's top agencies to become his unpaid assistant, moved into his cramped studio apartment, and lived on ramen noodles while he chased his entrepreneurial dreams. But when I saw the wedding announcement in the business section of the Chicago Tribune, featuring Marcus and my former boss Victoria smiling at their lavish ceremony in Napa Valley, I realized that I hadn't been building our future at all. I'd been building his future with someone else. My name is Sarah Chen, and this is the story of how I discovered that the man I'd sacrificed everything for had been using me as a stepping stone to reach the woman who could actually advance his career. This is about how Marcus Rivera, the struggling entrepreneur I'd believed in when no one else would, had been playing a long game that I was never meant to win. And this is about the moment I realized that sometimes the person you love most is the person who's willing to destroy you for their own success. It started 3 years ago when Marcus walked into Pinnacle Marketing, the prestigious agency where I'd worked my way up from intern to marketing director over 5 years. He was there to pitch his startup idea to Victoria Sterling, our CEO, hoping to land her as an investor and mentor. Marcus was everything I found irresistible: brilliant, passionate, charming, with the kind of infectious confidence that made you believe he could change the world. His startup was called ConnectFlow, a social media management platform designed to help small businesses streamline their online presence. The idea was solid, but Marcus lacked the business connections and industry experience to get it off the ground. Victoria had listened to his pitch politely but ultimately passed, saying the market was too saturated and the concept needed more development. I found Marcus afterward in the lobby, looking devastated by the rejection. Rough meeting? I asked, sitting down beside him. She didn't even give me a real chance, Marcus said, running his hands through his dark hair. 5 minutes into my presentation, I could see she'd already made up her mind. Victoria's tough, I said. But she's also one of the smartest business people in Chicago. If she passed, maybe there's something you can improve about your pitch. Marcus looked at me with those intense brown eyes that would later make me forget every rational thought I'd ever had. You work here? I'm the marketing director, I said. Sarah Chen. Marcus Rivera, he said, shaking my hand. And you're probably right about my pitch. I've been working on this idea for 2 years, but I'm not great at the business side of things. What's your background? Software development, Marcus said. I can build anything you can imagine, but selling it? That's not my strong suit. I should have walked away then. I should have wished him luck and gone back to my corner office and my six-figure salary and my carefully planned career trajectory. Instead, I found myself saying, "Would you like to get coffee sometime? I might be able to give you some marketing advice." That coffee date turned into dinner, which turned into a weekend together, which turned into the most intense relationship of my life. Marcus was unlike anyone I'd ever dated, passionate about his work, driven by a vision of changing how small businesses operated, and completely devoted to making his dreams reality. "I'm going to build something that matters," he told me during one of our late-night conversations in his tiny apartment. "Something that helps real people, not just makes rich people richer." I fell for his idealism, his determination, his willingness to risk everything for what he believed in. When he told me he was struggling to afford the software licenses and server costs he needed to develop ConnectFlow, I offered to help financially. When he said he needed someone with marketing expertise to help him refine his business plan, I started spending my evenings and weekends working on his project for free. "You don't have to do this," Marcus would say as I stayed up until 2 a.m. redesigning his website or writing copy for his investor presentations. "I want to," I'd tell him. "I believe in you. I believe in us."